The draw has taken place for the late debate. It's been submitted by the Honourable Member for Halifax-Chebucto. Therefore, be resolved that the government increase the household income limits used to qualify low-income families in Nova Scotia for home repair programs. We'll commence with the daily routine. Presenting and reading petitions. Presenting reports of committees. Tabling reports, regulations, and other papers. Statements by Minister. The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, it is indeed an honour today to launch a call for nominations for Nova Scotia's new Medal of Bravery. While we are surrounded by heroic actions every day by those acting in the best interests of their fellow citizens, such as our police, our firefighters, our doctors and nurses and paramedics, our social workers, and of course our military personnel, we are often struck by particular acts where an individual has risen to an extraordinary challenge in extraordinary circumstances. It is those Nova Scotians that we wish to direct this honour, Mr. Speaker. Today I call on all citizens to put forward the name of any individual or individuals who qualify for the Medal of Bravery and to follow the nomination process outlined in the form available at Access Nova Scotia centres across the province, or by going to www.gov.ns.ca/bravery. The deadline for nominations for this year is June 30th, 2008, and this covers actions of a Nova Scotian dating back to January 1st, 2007. The recommendations of those recipients deserving of the medal rests in the competent hands of a committee of accomplished Nova Scotian citizens. I thank them for their commitment, Mr. Speaker, to this duty. They are the Honourable Constance Glooby, former Chief Justice, Nova Scotia Court of Appeal as Chair, Wayne Adams, a former MLA and community activist, as well as John Cody, retired from the Department of National Defence. Statutory members include Marion Tyson, Deputy Minister for Justice, Brigadier General Richard Parsons, Commander, Land Forces Atlantic Area, Chief Gary L. Copeland, President, Nova Scotia Chiefs of Police Association, Craig McLaughlin, CEO, Emergency Management Office, and Robert Cormier, Public Safety and Office of the Fire Marshal. With the assent of all parties in this House, we passed the Medal of Bravery Act just 1 year ago. And I'm proud that today we are sending out the call to have names brought forward for nomination, and I thank all involved, Mr. Speaker, who have made this happen. Mr. Speaker, I am honoured to bring the nomination process for the Medal of Bravery of Nova Scotia forward in anticipation of commending today's heroes who have and will rise from a strong heritage of valour in our province. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the NDP caucus, I'm very pleased the province is now calling for nominations for this medal, the first Nova Scotia Medal of Bravery. It is very important to recognize the extraordinary citizens in our province who put themselves at risk to help others. They are the heroes who live among us and who inspire us all. The Premier mentioned this province has a strong heritage of valour. The evidence is in the almost 300 Nova Scotians that have been awarded the Canadian Medal of Bravery, including the MLA for Timberley Prospect and I believe the Minister for Transportation Infrastructure Renewal. They also include the Westray Dragermen, who risked their lives in an attempt to find survivors after the terrible explosion. We have had many great heroes in our past. No doubt there will be many more heroes in our future. My caucus is proud to be part of this important honour for Nova Scotians.
The Honourable the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my pleasure to rise today and respond to the Premier's statement. I believe, like my honourable colleague, that government should acknowledge the bravery of those ordinary Nova Scotians who have chosen to do extraordinary things. The Liberal caucus was pleased to support the Medal of Bravery Act passed 1 year ago. It is important for us to recognize and pay tribute to the everyday heroes in this province, those men and women who go beyond that which is expected of them. It is a deliberate choice to take action and move oneself from safety into harm's way in order to protect and provide help to someone in need. But Nova Scotians rise to that challenge, Mr. Speaker, every day. It is these individuals that the Medal of Bravery seeks to honour. I'd also like to take this opportunity to recognize our valued professionals who work hard to keep Nova Scotians and their families safe, secure, and out of harm's way. Our men and women in the military, law enforcement, fire protection, and our valued healthcare professionals set a standard of excellence and professionalism of which we should all be proud. Mr. Speaker, I proudly echo the Premier's call for nominations. The spirit of courage and determination and principle is our proud heritage and one that we should honor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before we move on, I would ask the members of the host to draw their attention to my gallery, where today we have some special visitors. We have with us today Wilfred Edmund. Would you please stand? His wife Annie, his daughter-in-law Deborah, his son Wilf, his very special family friend Ann McKay, his daughter Phyllis Hunter, and his son Brian. I'd ask the host to give them a warm round of welcome. The Honourable, the Minister of Military Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to rise today to acknowledge Wilf Edmund for his service to his community, our province, and our country. As Minister responsible for military relations, I am proud to see his impending installation as the Dominion Royal Canadian Legion President. He will be the first member elected to the post from Nova Scotia in 54 years. So it is indeed an honor for our province. This former member of the Canadian Army's Royal Canadian Ordnance Corps has been a member of the Royal Canadian Legion since first becoming a member of the Donkin Branch half a century ago. He served as president of Branch number 5 for 13 years. He has served on the Legion's Dominion Executive since 1995, holding positions on all major committees. He is a life member of his branch and has been honored with the 2 outstanding medals. Mr. Edmund has been in service to the Cape Breton Development Corporation until his retirement in 1991 after 36 years of service as a manager of Preventive Maintenance Department. His selfless commitment to his community also includes 35 years with Donkin's Volunteer Fire Department and was a member of the much-loved Men of the Deeps. Mr. Speaker, this gentleman's genuine commitment to Donkin, Nova Scotia, and his country extends also to his family. He has a daughter and 2 sons. His positive influence on his children is obvious. His 2 sons, Brian and Wilf, are both members of the Canadian military. Brian has served in the Persian Gulf and Wilf in Afghanistan. Devotion to service to our country is obviously in the genes. I thank these 2 men for their commitment also. Mr. Speaker, it is hard to believe that one man can accomplish so much. I am sure he could not have done this without the love and the support of his wife and family. Once again, on behalf of all Nova Scotians, I offer my congratulations to Mr. Edmund and wish him well as he prepares for the significant work ahead, and thank him for his contributions this far. Thank you very much.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the NDP caucus and as a member of the Royal Canadian Legion, I would like to congratulate Wilf Edmund on his promotion to the National Legion President. Mr. Edmund has worked on behalf of the Legion for more than 25 years. This is not only an honor for Mr. Edmund, it is an honor for our province because he's the first Nova Scotian since 1954 to be elected to this position. And I'm not sure about this, but perhaps the first person from Cape Breton to receive this honor. Sure. Mr. Edmund began serving his country more than 50 years ago when he joined the Army and the Ordnance Corps. He has contributed to his province through the Legion work, as a longtime volunteer with the Donkin Fire Department, and as a singer with the Men of the Deeps. Mr. Edmund is an outstanding Nova Scotian who has dedicated his life to serving his family, his community, and his country. On behalf of my caucus, I would like to thank him for his contribution to our province and for the work he will be doing as President of the Royal Canadian Legion. Thank you.
The Honourable the Member for Cape Breton South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise in my place here today as the military relations critic to honor Wilf Edmund, a good friend of mine, and as the leader of the NDP has stated, he's also from the large city of Donkin in Cape Breton, and has not only distinguished, he's the most distinguished resident of Donkin that I know these days. Anyway, he's going to be installed as President of the Royal Canadian Legion, and indeed, that's an honor for both Nova Scotia and in particularly in Cape Breton. He's been on the Legion executive for many, many years, and he served on all major committees, making this a natural progression for Mr. Edmund to rise to the top of that grand Canadian organization. He's been a member of the Legion for 50 years, as was previously stated, and he, I know, is a proud Legion member. I have the opportunity on many occasions to meet Wilf at installation of officers and awards nights in various branches in Cape Breton, and I too am very proud to be a life member of the Royal Canadian Legion, so I know that it's a privilege when Wilf comes to our branch that we're able to welcome him, and he never misses, and Branch 138 in Ashby is pretty pleased about that, Wilf, that you're there every year. And we in the Liberal caucus wish you and your family all the best in the future. You have a distinguished family. You are a distinguished icon in Cape Breton, and we certainly wish you smooth sailing in the future in your new role as President of the Dominion Command. Thank you very much.
The Honourable the Member for Richmond on an introduction.
Well, thank you very much, Speaker. All members of the House are well aware of the important role that legislative pages play in the operations of the House of Assembly, and it's always a pleasure when we have some of them visit us after they're no longer working here. In the West Gallery today, we have a familiar face that worked here as legislative page some sessions ago. Shahzad Pradham is here today, and with him as well is his parents visiting from Pakistan, Amir Ali and Yasmin. And as well, Mr. Speaker, members will note an important addition to his family. Shahzad now has with him his beautiful daughter, Serena, who is joining us here today as well.
Government notices of motion. The Honourable the Premier.
Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future date I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 2008 marks the 250th anniversary of the birth of parliamentary democracy in Canada, one of the many proud firsts for Nova Scotia. And whereas Democracy 250 is celebrating this year by recognizing and thanking our veterans and their organization, the Royal Canadian Legion, for standing firm for democracy. And whereas at the National Dominion Convention in Ottawa in June, Wilfred Edmund of Donkin will be installed as the new president of the Dominion Legion Command, becoming the first Nova Scotian to assume this prestigious and important position in 54 years. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House thank Wilfred Edmund for his long and devoted service to his country, commend him for his loyal and dedicated support of the Royal Canadian Legion over the past 50 years, and extend sincere best wishes to him as he takes on the new exciting role as President of the Dominion Executive during this special year of celebration. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favour signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas staff and volunteers from across the country are celebrating VON Week, incorporating this year's theme, Stay at Home with VON. And whereas hundreds of Victorian Order of Nurses staff and volunteers play a key role in helping Nova Scotians across the province remain independent in their communities and in their homes. And whereas Halifax women played a significant role in the establishment of the VON in 1897, bringing the concerns of the women to Lady Ishbel Aberdeen, who, as president of the National Council of Women, directed that a nursing service be established in honour of the Silver Jubilee of Queen Victoria. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of this House join in the celebration as VON sites across Nova Scotia celebrate their achievements and raise awareness of the important role VON plays in the Canadian healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Minister for Military Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I was wondering if I could do an introduction, please.
Please do.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to draw to the attention of my colleagues in the House to the Speaker's gallery, where we have two special guests, members of the United States Navy, who are visiting our province following a bilateral exercise off the coast of Scotland. First, we have Commander William Parker, is the commanding officer of the USS Donald Cook. He is also joined by Petty Officer Jennifer Stoker, the communications officer of the USS Donald Cook. And I'd ask all members to give them a warm welcome to Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on the future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 3 ships of the United States Navy, the USS Barry, the USS Donald Cook, and the USNS Bighorn departed their home port of Norfolk, Virginia on April 7th to participate in a joint American-British exercise Joint Warrior off the coast of Scotland. And whereas following these exercises, these 3 ships have steered the course for Halifax to begin a week-long visit to our province. And whereas the visit of these ships and their sailors is a further indication of the close friendship of the people of Nova Scotia and the United States Navy, therefore be it resolved that all members of the House acknowledge and offer a heartfelt welcome to the ship's companies of the USS Barry, the USS Donald Cook, and the USNS Bighorn on the occasion of their port visit to Halifax. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the federal government has announced new guidelines that will better reflect the origin of agri-food products sold in Canada, and whereas under the new rules, a Product of Canada label will mean that all or virtually all of the contents are Canadian in origin, and if the ingredients in the product come from another country, the label will indicate that they are imported. And whereas this qualified label will let shoppers know they are supporting Canadian jobs and Canadian economy, even if not all the contents come from Canada. Therefore, be it resolved that members of this legislature support these proposed new guidelines for the agri-food products, as they will help consumers when choosing and buying their groceries. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Deputy Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to present this resolution on behalf of the Honourable Member for Cape Breton West, but in the context of the resolution, more appropriately to say on behalf of yourself, sir. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas there is no greater honour than to be recognized by one's peers, and whereas that opportunity so seldom happens to one so universally admired, and whereas a life of service to one's community, province, and the Commonwealth is one that is deserving of the respect of all, therefore be it resolved that this House do congratulate Arthur R. Donoghue, QC, on receiving an honorary degree from St. Mary's University, while recognizing that tenure in this place can, upon occasion, provide the path to greater glory. Mr. Speaker, I seek waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. Introduction of bills. The Honourable the Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 5 of the Acts of 1990, the Children and Family Services Act.
The honourable member begs leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 5 of the Acts of 1990, the Children and Family Services Act.
Bill 178, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 5 of the Acts of 1990, the Children and Family Services Act.
Order that this bill be read for a second time on a future day. Notices of motion. The Honourable the Member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Gwen McLean of Green Hill, Pictou County has been honored with the 2008 Excellence in Teaching Award, and whereas Gwen McLean is the principal of Salt Springs Elementary School, the Reading Recovery teacher, and the grade 4 and 5 Social Studies and Science teacher, and whereas held in high esteem by her colleagues, Gwen McLean is also greatly admired by staff, teachers, and parents for being a most caring teacher. Therefore, be resolved that the members of this House of Assembly congratulate Gwen McLean, principal of Salt Springs Elementary School, for receiving the 2008 Excellence in Teaching Award and commend her for her commitment and dedication to her profession. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the Leader of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 508 has been representing transit workers in Halifax Regional Municipality for 100 years, and whereas though their employer has changed many times throughout the years, the union representation has remained the same. And whereas the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 508 will be celebrating 100 years of representation with a dinner and dance on June 7th, 2008, therefore be it resolved the members of the House of Assembly extend best wishes to the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 508 on this special anniversary and wish them continued success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas many things have changed during the past 100 years in the community of Barrs Corner, Lunenburg County, Howard Mader's store continues to provide quality products and service to the residents of its community. And whereas Howard Mader opened Mader's General Store in 1908 and offered a wide array of goods and merchandise to local residents. Whereas John Mader took over the operation of the store in 1945 after returning from the war, and Peter and Rosemary Mader now own and operate the store. Therefore, be it resolved that all members of the House of Assembly congratulate John Mader and Peter and Rosemary Mader on the milestone of their 100th year of operating Mader's store in Barrs Corner and providing superior service and quality products to their community. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the Member for Halifax Citadel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas cycling is one of the cleanest, most sustainable modes of transportation that exists, and whereas a number of Nova Scotians choose this method of transportation for work, school, and their recreational needs, and whereas the Halifax Cycling Coalition is a group of citizens that advocate on behalf of cyclists to improve the conditions for cycling in the Halifax Regional Municipality and to increase cycling awareness and the safety of cyclists, therefore be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly congratulate the Halifax Cycling Coalition for its efforts to make Halifax a more bike-friendly city, and that all members take the responsibility to assist in their success. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Cape Breton South.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day to move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on May 10th, 2008, Cape Breton University celebrated the graduation of 600 students at their convocation ceremony. Whereas at the ceremony, honorary degrees were given to B. LeBlanc, a humanitarian, role model, and advocate for women and children, and Dr. Kenneth Mann, a world leader on aquatic ecology. And whereas in addition to her honorary degree, Ms. LeBlanc gave the address to the graduating class. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly congratulate all spring 2008 graduates of Cape Breton University and wish them every success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for waiver.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day, I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Motorcycle Ride for Dead is without a doubt Canada's largest annual motorcycle event dedicated to fighting prostate cancer through research and education, and whereas there are an estimated 1 million men with prostate cancer in Canada, with 4,300 dying every year, and an estimated 800,000 having the cancer and not even realizing it. And whereas the first Motorcycle Ride for Dead took place in Ottawa back in 2000 with 75 riders, and this exercise has now grown into a number of rides right across Canada, including a big one here in Halifax on Saturday, June 14th. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House have recognize the ardent support put forth by Chair Mitch McIntyre, former Dartmouth MLA Tim Olive, Ride Captain Mark Doyle, and Murray McIntyre, and wish them every success with their fundraising initiatives for prostate research. And Mr. Speaker, I would point out that there will be a press conference here tomorrow at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I would request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. Honourable the member for Halifax Atlantic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas every 2 years, the Liverpool International Theatre Festival brings live drama from around the world to the stage of the historic Astor Theatre, where the best of amateur theatre is judged. And whereas 11 plays were presented during the 5 days of this festival, allowing companies from Syria, Israel, Germany, Canada, the USA, and Wales to perform, compete, and to share in workshops. And whereas Theatre Arts Guild, Canada's oldest continuously running amateur theatre and the pride of Jollymore, was the only Nova Scotia company to win an award, being recognised for its production of The Lover as Best Canadian Play and for the performance of Vanessa Walton Bone as Outstanding Actress. Therefore, be it resolved that this House extend congratulations to Theatre Arts Guild on receiving the Best Canadian Play Award, to Vanessa Walton Bone as Outstanding Actress at the Liverpool International Theatre Festival, and wish them continued success on the local and international stage. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Dalhousie Circle K International Club was officially established at a chartering dinner on April 3, 2008, and whereas the event was presided over by past Kiwanis International President Glenn Bagnall and attended by other members of the Kiwanis Club of Dartmouth, and whereas the new club under founding President Michael Kennedy is committed to community service, leadership, and fellowship, therefore be it resolved that the members of this legislature offer congratulations to the founding members and the executive of the Dalhousie Circle K International Club and wish them every success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I should move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas in April 2008, the Lockview High School Senior Concert Band and Senior Jazz Band, under the direction of Joe Cormier, performed at the Heritage International Music Festival in Boston. And whereas Lockview won a remarkable 6 major awards at the festival, including first place in its class for both the senior jazz and senior concert band, and whereas Lockview High won the prestigious Festival Spirit Award for the delegation that best represents its school, community, state, province, and country with spirit and cooperation. Therefore, be it resolved that this House of Assembly congratulate the Lockview High School Senior Concert Band and Senior Jazz Band for their outstanding musical achievements and stellar performances at the 2008 Heritage International Music Festival. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Richmond.
Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of following resolution. Whereas the Strait Area Education Recreation Centre has received a most generous donation in the form of a $500,000 memorial scholarship fund for SARIC students. Whereas the scholarship was given to the school by the late Ford Smith, a local businessman with a keen interest in seeing students pursue further education. Whereas Mr. Smith carefully designed a selection committee comprised of representatives of St. Mark's United Church, the Knights of Columbus of St. Joseph's Parish, SARIC faculty, and the Strait Area Chamber of Commerce to judge applicants on criteria including academic achievement, community involvement, and financial need. Therefore, be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly recognize the generosity of the late Ford Smith in providing $500,000 in scholarship money to students of the Strait Area Education Recreation Centre. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice, passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the Minister of Immigration, on an introduction.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's always great when we have visitors come to the House. I want to just take a moment to recognize Mr. Kevin Riles. Kevin Riles is a local business entrepreneur here in the Halifax HRM area. Through his businesses, Mr. Speaker, with his Pinkies locations in the Halifax, Bedford, Sackville areas, Kevin is a great employer of some of our finest young people in this area. And with the opening of the Pinkies location in Sackville, he now employs over 200 summer students. And so, Kevin, I'd like you to rise and accept a warm welcome from the House.
The Honourable, the member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas an innovative fitness incentive program known as Queens Fit Pro has been introduced in Queens County to help 100 inactive residents of the county get involved in regular physical activity. And whereas the participants will be referred by their family doctor, who will provide them with a voucher which will discount the membership to Queens Fit Pro by 50%. And whereas this program will encourage preventive health needs and provide significant benefits to the participants and to the community by providing the participants with qualified staff support and a full range of fitness equipment. Therefore, be it resolved that this House of Assembly recognize the family doctors of Queens General Hospital, Queens Fitness Centre, the Queens Community Health Board, and the Region of Queens Municipality for putting this incentive in place for residents of Queens. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas each year a day is set aside for the public to recognize the important role that museums play in areas such as education, tourism, and the arts. And whereas today the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia is celebrating International Museum Day by offering free admission to the public from 5 until 9 o'clock this evening. Whereas this year's theme for International Museum Day is Museums, Agents of Social Change and Development. Therefore, it be resolved that members of this House of Assembly recognize May 22, 2008 as International Museum Day in this province, and be aware of the many educational opportunities that museums provide. And I'd ask for waiver.
There has been a request for a waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the member for Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Nova Scotia lobster industry is the single most important source of revenue for a great number of fishers across Nova Scotia and the Maritime provinces, and whereas the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife and the Species at Risk Committee have raised the concerns of fishers across Nova Scotia on the potential listing of cuss as an endangered species, and whereas any such listing of cuss under the Species at Risk Act would have a devastating effect to the lobster industry in southwest Nova Scotia and the great economic impact because of the potential of closure of some of the lucrative fishing grounds, therefore be it resolved that the House of Assembly, after much discussion in budget estimates, late debate on this topic, support fishers in our rural communities by requesting further review before the cuss is named as an endangered species. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
I believe that we cannot have a resolution that involves an act that is before the House. So I would rule it out of order. The Honourable the member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas Clarence Shopping Mart in Sonyville was presented with the 2008 Foodland Store of the Year Award for the Maritimes, and whereas the owners, Clarence and Alain Comeau, recognized the dedication and support of their manager, Wade Chasson, and their staff in achieving this award, and whereas Clarence Shopping Mart is an important shopping centre in Clare, and the owners appreciate the strong customer base and support they receive. Therefore, it be resolved that members of this House of Assembly congratulate Clarence Shopping Mart owners Clarence and Alain Comeau and their staff for being awarded the Foodland Store of the Year Award for 2008 for the Maritimes. Mr. Speaker, I would ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the member for Timberley Prospect. There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the member for Digby Annapolis. The Honourable the member for Digby Annapolis. The Honourable the member for Digby Annapolis. We seem to be having some technical difficulties, so we're going to have to take a short recess. Order, please. The Honourable the Member for Timberley Prospect.
I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas an important and integral part of every school is the band program, whereas on May 14th, the Western Halifax Showcase Concert featuring school bands from throughout the area was held at Sir John A. Macdonald High School, and whereas legendary band teacher Jeffrey Stern coordinated this highly successful band event, therefore be it resolved that the House of Assembly congratulate Jeffrey Stern for a successful Western Halifax Showcase Concert, thank him and all band teachers for their dedication and commitment to band programs in schools throughout our province. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Member for Digby Annapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas in recent years we have seen a decrease in the fish population, and in some cases gray seals are the culprit. And whereas National Geographic has donated the critter cams, which will be installed on the shoulders of gray seals from the Sable Island region, in an attempt to track what the seals are eating and where they are eating it. Whereas each seal will be filmed over a period of approximately 6 weeks, in which time scientists will have the difficult task of retrieving the critter cams from the seal. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the House of Assembly wish the scientists involved with this project the best of luck, both in their study and in retrieving the critter cams from these roughly 800-pound seals. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favour signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable the Member for Shelburne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following resolution, the clarification, therefore be it resolved that this House of Assembly support fishers in our rural communities by requesting further review before the cuss is named an endangered species. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas on January 24, 2008, Joe and Krista McKinnon's family expanded to 7 as they and their son Matthew welcomed quadruplets into their lives. And whereas these quadruplets are unique in that they are 2 sets of identical twins, twin boys Ben and Alex, along with twin girls Maura and Julia, all of whom are healthy and have been able to come home. And whereas many people throughout the community have offered assistance to this young couple as they adjust to their new situation as parents of quadruplets, therefore be it resolved that members of the House of Assembly congratulate Joe and Krista McKinnon on their healthy quadruplets and recognize the many generous people who have helped ease their financial challenges. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice, passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas the Lockview High School Senior Jazz Band placed first in its class at the Heritage International Music Festival, in Boston in April 2008, and whereas band member Annie Brown, a grade 11 student at Lockview, wowed the festival with her vocal solo in Birdland, and whereas Annie Brown won the Jazz Band Maestro Award for outstanding solo, musical ability, and sensitivity. Therefore, be it resolved that this House of Assembly commend Annie Brown upon her achievements at the 2008 Heritage International Music Festival and congratulate her for winning the Jazz Band Maestro Award. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 4 students from the Glace Bay Elementary School competed in the annual French Public Speaking Contest, and whereas Roy Karam, Victoria Clark, Emily Milley, and Ashley Angel participated in this competition held March 26th in the library of Malcolm Monroe Junior High, and whereas Roy placed first in his category, Emily and Ashley placed second and third respectively. Therefore, be it resolved, the members of the House of Assembly acknowledge the participation Roy Karam, Victoria Clark, Emily Milley, and Ashley Angelo in this challenging competition, and may they have continued success in the future. Mr. Speaker, I ask for waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Cole Harbour Eastern Passage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your indulgence, before I do my resolution, I'd like to draw attention to some very special guests in the gallery today, in the Speaker's Gallery. 3 residents of Eastern Passage, 2 of which are my sons. I'm especially pleased to have them here today, 2 out of 3, Isaac Kent and Matthew Kent. So if I could ask the House to give them a warm welcome, I appreciate it. As well, Mr. Speaker, they're here today with their father, and I want to take the time to recognize him here today and introduce him as a Canadian representative for us at the Beijing Paralympic Games. He's representing Canada in the sport of table tennis. And we're especially pleased to say as well that he's been selected of one of a very few who will be ambassadors for Canada at those Olympic Games, Ian Kent. And I ask the House to give him a warm welcome and wish him the best of luck. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas 47-year-old resident of Eastern Passage, Ian Kent, has been an elite athlete and coach in both table tennis and soccer on the local, national, and international level. And whereas despite a 9-year battle with the neuromuscular disorder dystonia, Ian Kent continues to demonstrate an indomitable spirit of courage, determination, and grit to all who know him, including his children, Isaac, Tyler, and Matthew, and other family members and friends. And whereas Ian Kent will be fulfilling his lifelong dream when he travels to Beijing, China in September to compete in the sport of table tennis in the 2008 Paralympic Games, therefore be it resolved that this House of Assembly congratulate Ian Kent for exemplifying such a strong will to compete and to overcome obstacles on his way to reaching his goal to represent Canada and his home province of Nova Scotia in the sport of table tennis in the September 2008 Paralympic Games, and wish him the best of luck in his competitions. Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? Agreed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Clare.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hereby give notice that on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas co-organisers Huey Batherson, Vice Dean of Université Sainte-Anne, and Francis Robichaud, team president of Clare Lions Junior C hockey team, organised a charity hockey game for the Clare Special Olympics on Saturday, February 2nd, 2008. And whereas the charity hockey game was organised between a team made up of former professional players and the Clare Lions Junior C hockey team, and whereas they raised $2,000 in support of the Clare Special Olympics, therefore it be resolved that members of this House congratulate and thank the co-organisers of this fundraising event, Huey Batherson and Francis Robichaud, for reaching out to such a worthy cause. And Mr. Speaker, I would ask waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Against? Motion is carried. The Honourable, the member for Pictou West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hereby give notice on a future day I shall move the adoption of the following resolution. Whereas for 13 successful years, the Canadian Geography Challenge is Canada's largest student geography competition, and whereas this competition has seen over 2 million students who have participated from every province in the country over that time, and whereas Sandy Sutherland, a grade 9 student from River John, with a passion for geography, spent many long hours preparing for this year's competition by studying various atlases and maps, was one of 13 finalists at the 2008 Nova Scotia provincial competition. Therefore, be it resolved that the members of the House of Assembly congratulate Sandy Sutherland for reaching the provincial finals of the Great Canadian Geography Challenge and commend him for his hard work and commitment to the study of geography. And Mr. Speaker, I request waiver of notice and passage without debate.
There has been a request for waiver. Is it agreed? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Orders of the day. The oral questions put by members. The time is now 4:11 and we'll go to 5:11. The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question will be for the Premier. Nova Scotians learned yesterday that the Department of Health doesn't account for savings in the seniors pharmacare program. Despite what the health minister says, seniors do pay more than 25% of the program cost. In the past 7 years, seniors paid anywhere from 25.13% of the cost to 28.33% of the cost. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is a lot of money when you're talking about a program worth nearly $180 million. So my question for the Premier is this: how long has the Premier known that seniors were getting shortchanged with the pharmacare program?
The Honourable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to ensuring that seniors in this province are treated fairly. The program, as was mentioned by my colleague, Mr. Speaker, is close to $180 million in investment, which ensures, Mr. Speaker, a 75-25% split. We work with the Group of 9 representing seniors across this province to ensure that the program reflects their needs, their wishes, Mr. Speaker, and we will continue to do so.
Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this government has siphoned off more than $27 million away from the seniors' pharmacare since 2001. Mr. Speaker, they took money from the pockets of people on fixed incomes who are counting every penny to pay for prescription drugs, and the government knows that they don't even keep track of how much money it is siphoning away. So my question to the Premier is this: can the Premier tell seniors why his government has not been honest enough to tell them that they are using seniors' pharmacare as a way to squeeze some extra revenue out of seniors?
The Honourable the Premier.
Speaker, through you to the member, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the rhetoric, Mr. Speaker, that we hear from the NDP trying to suggest things which simply aren't factual to the citizens of this province. Mr. Speaker, a few weeks ago they were saying a long-term care facility wasn't being built, Mr. Speaker, and it was being built. The week after, they had to apologize for suggesting that certain individuals had to pay, Mr. Speaker, for long-term care facilities, Mr. Speaker, payments, which simply wasn't true, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we don't know really what to believe from the NDP.
Honourable the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Higher gas prices, higher home heating costs, skyrocketing food costs, and extra taxes on electricity from a budget that, of course, we would not support. I can't understand why this government would want to foist extra hardship upon the most vulnerable section of our society at a time like this, Mr. Speaker. My question for the Premier is, will he do the decent thing and put the millions of dollars they've taken from seniors back into their pockets?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, once again, the NDP have it wrong. Have it wrong. They're standing there and misleading seniors in this province. Misleading. Shame on them. Mr. Speaker, if they would have actually knew how to read the sheet that was before them, they would know that the seniors paid 25% of that cost. The deputy said that the seniors paid 25% of that cost. Mr. Speaker, every premium went into that side of the equation. Mr. Speaker, I said also yesterday in my response to this same very question, was that the dollars are dollars of taxpayers' money that go into this program that cover the 75% of our dollars that were underspent. There was a savings there to the taxpayer of Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, Nova Scotian seniors are paying no more than they have to be. As a matter of fact, they get to have...
Order, please. Order, please.
The rest of the document. Read the rest.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable, the member for Glace Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. Yesterday, we learned that there has been a surplus in the seniors' pharmacare budget. In the last couple of years, it's amounted to some $17 million, and numbers of that magnitude point to one conclusion, that seniors didn't need to pay an increase in their premiums last year. This year, Mr. Speaker, seniors were subjected to changes in the program again. The $30 cap was removed from the copay, and in return, seniors could sign up for what's called option number 2, which would allow them to pay the $382 up front. So my question for the minister is, given that you had all of the budgetary information before you, why did you remove that $30 cap, which is causing undue hardship for seniors in this province?
Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question. When it came to the $30 cap, it was the decision of the department, in concert with the Group of 9, that since seniors were able to pay their premium on a monthly basis, that they were able to pay their deductible on a monthly basis, that the cap was not required. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure seniors who have a drug cost that go up and above that maximum copay, that they will be taking that out on a monthly basis. That's why we got rid of the cap.
The Honourable, the member for Glace Bay on his first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the news gets worse for seniors because if you choose to pay that $382 up front and come the end of the fiscal year, all or part of that $382 is unspent, they don't get it back. Mr. Speaker, the government has established a use it or lose it policy when it comes to paying the copay up front. So my question to the minister is, knowing that you had major surpluses in the seniors pharmacare budget over the past 2 years, why didn't you commit to refunding the balance of that $382 to seniors if it remained unspent?
The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, year to year, there has been adjustments to the premium paid by seniors. Mr. Speaker, if you would have noticed this year, there was no increase to seniors. Mr. Speaker, there is still increasing cost, drug care costs. And Mr. Speaker, I can also say thank you very much to the member, to the Minister of Agriculture. This is the most inexpensive plan in all of Atlantic Canada.
The Honourable, the member for Glace Bay on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, it's my understanding that about 3,000 seniors have signed up for that option number 2. So I guess they'd rather take their chances than pay $382 knowing that they're not going to get it back if it's unspent. Now, given that the minister is intent on continuing to build surpluses then in the senior pharmacare program, my question to him, Mr. Speaker, is why won't the minister, at the very least, let seniors carry over any balance of the $382 to next year's program?
Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And that is a good suggestion, one that I'll bring back to the department to look more closely at. Mr. Speaker, we want to make sure that the program is as fair as it can be. But, Mr. Speaker, drug costs do change, program do change, and we'll try to make it as fair as we can to Nova Scotian seniors. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to have the best plan in all of Atlantic Canada.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question will be for the Minister of Health. The Minister knows that he's presiding over the unraveling of healthcare services here in the province, and probably nowhere is that more apparent than with the conditions at the transitional unit of the Victoria General Hospital. Those have been concerns for not only the seniors who live there and their families, but also to the staff who care for them. Chronic water leaks have led to mold problems, and staff are experiencing respiratory illnesses. The issue was made public in January, but little has been done, so nurses are here today, Mr. Speaker, to voice their concerns. I ask the Minister of Health, when will he take decisive action for the health and safety of the seniors and of the health professionals who work on the transitional unit?
The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to be the Minister of Health of a system that's in the middle of transformation to be better for all Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the nurses and, of course, the NSGEU for coming here today to speak to me, to speak to the Minister of Environment and Labour, to talk about the issues that they're having at the transitional unit is one that I'm aware of. Mr. Speaker, one that we're trying to find some solutions. Mr. Speaker, it would be my hope that someday that we can move the residents out of that facility and close the doors once and for all. Mr. Speaker, that cannot happen today. Mr. Speaker, because we still need to take care of the seniors that are there. Mr. Speaker, we will take the concerns that the people brought to us today and see if there's any other solutions that we can come up with.
Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, despite their own health concerns, the nurses and other staff are even more concerned for the seniors who live in those conditions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Tests may show that mold is within acceptable limits, but the nurses will tell you that the air quality on the unit is terrible and that they are frequently taking seniors' clothing home for laundering. This has been an ongoing issue for over 2 years, and one by one the healthcare workers are having problems. Just imagine how much worse it is, Mr. Speaker, for the seniors who are there living on the unit. So my question to the minister is, why is he so unwilling to close this unit?
Honourable the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I will simply maybe ask this question of the member of the official opposition, is where would we send these seniors that so much need our help?
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on his final supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Health in 2004, the then Minister of Health, announced the closure of that unit for the summer of that year and the opening of new facilities, Mr. Speaker. So the question for the Minister is, why are they still there?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, they accuse us sometimes of not answering the question, but Mr. Speaker, there was a non-answer as well. Mr. Speaker, I can say to the member opposite that we're working through a continuing care strategy to build 832 beds across this province, the largest amount of infrastructure happening in this province. Mr. Speaker, we are building a brand new Northwood Healthcare on the Hammonds Plains Road with, oh, wait a minute, they forgot. They didn't know where that was. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to make improvements for seniors in this province. We will continue to invest over $260 million to take care of our loved ones.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on a new question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Mr. Speaker, the centerpiece of the government's budget was an across-the-board 8% increase on basic electricity for every household in Nova Scotia. And as if that weren't bad enough, the 8% rebate was removed from all electricity, Mr. Speaker, all electricity, including heating, on May 15th. Apparently, this government thought that the 30% of Nova Scotian homes that heat with electricity won't need the heat after May 15th. Mr. Speaker, the overnight lows for the Halifax area for the 7 days since this cold-hearted tax increase came into effect have averaged 5 degrees and some nights down to 3 degrees. So my question for the Premier is, when will this government admit that the 8% rebate on electricity should never have been removed?
Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I stand by what was in the budget, Mr. Speaker, because the government's intentions through the budget was to ensure that we got more help where that help was needed, and that's for low-income Nova Scotians. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the NDP did not see that need, Mr. Speaker, and they voted against a budget that not only gave a rebate, Mr. Speaker, in the tune of up to $200, Mr. Speaker, for individuals of low income, but also gave that HST rebate, Mr. Speaker, for those on their home heating. Now, the NDP saw fit to vote against that. They also saw fit to vote against seniors with the doubling of, Mr. Speaker, the property tax rebate over the coming year. They also saw fit, Mr. Speaker, to vote against—
Order, please. I'm having trouble hearing the Premier speak. The Honourable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP can try to spin it any way they want, Mr. Speaker. They had the chance to do the right thing, but they put politics ahead of people.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That Premier and that government put an 8% tax on every home in Nova Scotia. That's the Tory record in this province. No wonder he doesn't want to answer questions. So, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about Port Hawkesbury, closer to the Premier's house. On the next 5 days, Environment Canada forecasts an average low of 4 degrees, dipping down to 2 degrees on Monday. 30% of Nova Scotians heat with electricity, and every single bit of that electricity for the next 4 months will be taxed, Mr. Speaker. My question to the Premier was, when will this government admit that the 8% rebate on electricity should never have been removed?
The Honourable, the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we have made it perfectly clear that the money that is being saved off of that program is being used to provide benefits to low-income Nova Scotians. That's where the money went.
Yep. The Leader. The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on
In
his
fact,
final
Mr. Speaker,
supplement.
that's just not true. The reality is that for the next 4 months, not a single penny will go back to anybody. Mr. Speaker, not a penny. Mr. Speaker, the government messaging on the HST rebate has been less than complete. Let me table a piece of information distributed by the MLA for Chester St. Margaret's. It says the 8% HST rebate is being continued on all home heating. Mr. Speaker, that is not true, never was true, never will be true. So my question to the Premier is this: when will he ask the MLA for Chester St. Margaret's to send out a correction so that her constituents and all Nova Scotians will know just how hard this tax increase is going to hit all of them?
The Honourable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, well, Mr. Speaker, it must be very difficult because I can just imagine this summer, Mr. Speaker, the various events for the leader of the NDP be going in to talk to average Nova Scotians, perhaps as a fisherman, Mr. Speaker, in the Eastern Passage area. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, it's in Queens County, and he's going to have to listen to them talk about, Mr. Speaker, the fact that they voted against fishermen in rural Nova Scotia. They're going to have to hear.
Order, please. The Honourable, the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, they're going to have to hear, Mr. Speaker, that they voted against new programs and community services to help those in need. They're going to have to hear, Mr. Speaker, why they voted against ensuring that 180,000 Nova Scotians are receiving a farmer care program. They voted against it, Mr. Speaker. They're not standing up for anything, Mr. Speaker. They're standing up for themselves, and that's it, Mr. Speaker.
That's better. The Honourable, the member for Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, Strait Area residents are once again frustrated and embarrassed by the actions of select members of the Strait Regional School Board. The board itself, for all intents and purposes, has become paralysed. While the Minister of Education has removed certain financial and human resources powers from the board, certain members continue to act in an inappropriate and deplorable manner. Parents, students, teachers, and residents from the Strait Area are now looking to the Minister and the Premier for leadership in dealing with these disruptive members. And my question to the Minister is, what steps will she take to address the problem with specific members of the Strait Regional School Board?
The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member opposite, who is very familiar with the situation at the Strait Board, as are a lot of Nova Scotians at this point in time. And I have to tell you that my comments to the press with respect to my feelings were that I was very disappointed with the behavior, the decorum around the boardroom table, and I will do everything I can to work with the board chair and to make sure that this does not have a negative impact on any delivery of programs to our students.
The Honourable, the member for Richmond on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, in December 2006, the Minister disbanded the Halifax Regional School Board, stating that it was her only legislative option under the Education Act to deal with disruptive members that had rendered that board dysfunctional. The Minister and her government have had a year and a half to introduce amendments to the Education Act to allow either herself or the boards to discipline, suspend, or remove disruptive members. Mr. Speaker, disbanding an entire school board due to the actions of a few rogue members is not a reasonable approach. Now, my question to the Minister: why have you and your government failed to bring about legislative changes to deal with disruptive school board members in Nova Scotia?
The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, we certainly have looked at the provisions within the Act, the authority that gives the Minister within the Act, and I'm not comparing one school board with another. I would not do that, but I will look at each one individually, and we are currently, as I've said, reviewing the situation at the Strait Board, and we will not allow the performance or the lack of performance, the functionality of a board, to interfere with programs for students.
The Honourable, the member for Richmond on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, as the member for Richmond, allow me to publicly express my full support for the two school board members from Richmond County, George Keogh and Francine Boudreau. Mr. Speaker, I would question whether the Premier, the Minister of Economic Development and the Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture would be prepared to do the same about their members. Mr. Speaker, the residents of Richmond County deserve to continue having excellent representation from George Keogh and Francine Boudreau rather than having them silenced by the Minister of Education for the actions of a few rogue school board members. So my final supplementary is, will the Minister of Education commit to introducing changes to the Education Act during this session to allow school boards the ability to deal with disruptive members?
The Honourable, the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, I will repeat my answer from the previous two questions. I will do whatever is in my power to ensure that we protect student programs in the classroom.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question will be for the Minister of Agriculture. While Canada's pork industry struggles to sustain itself amid rising feed costs, shrinking inventory, declining hog slaughter, and fleeing producers, the country's strong currency is resulting, ironically, in increased imports of pork from the United States. Nova Scotia hog producers have declined from 78 in 2005 to under 50 today. Of those left, I'm told by Pork Nova Scotia that there are 25 that are in the process of liquidating. What this is really saying about Nova Scotia is that we are a province that is losing its ability to feed itself. My question for the minister is this: if he won't do something provincially to protect Nova Scotians, how does he expect to protect Nova Scotians once we become 100% dependent on imports?
The Honourable, the Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the official opposition leader is right about one thing, and that is that the pork producers in Nova Scotia are facing an incredible amount of challenges. The biggest concern that the pork producer has is the high cost of production, the input costs relative to feed, high fuel costs, and in fact the ability to compete with some of the major corporations. And what this government has done is worked with the producers, assisted many of our producers with transition to different models that would take them out of the so-called North American model of production, when quite frankly they have that difference in the cost of production and the cost they actually get for the pig. And we as a government have supported the local producers, but we do recognize that we have financial pressures, and as a consequence we can't expect the taxpayers to continue to subsidize the difference between the cost of production and what they actually get for the product. And Mr. Speaker, we are working with the pork producers, and as recently as 3 weeks ago I did sit down with the chairman of Pork Nova Scotia to discuss some of the challenges that they are facing. And without a doubt, that is a sector that is struggling in the agriculture industry in the province of Nova Scotia.
Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition on his first supplementary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The farmers I speak to tell a very different story. These circumstances that I outlined are affecting all farmers, and in the end, Mr. Speaker, it'll be Nova Scotia consumers who pay. Consumers forked out 1.2% more for food in April than they did a year earlier, mainly because of rising food costs. As our farms disappear, we will become more dependent on food imports, and every rise in the cost of energy will be reflected in Nova Scotians' grocery bill. So my question to the minister is this: why, Mr. Speaker, has he failed to ensure a viable agriculture sector in this province?
Honourable, the Minister of Agriculture.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have not failed. In fact, we have worked with the agriculture industry in Nova Scotia. Many of the sectors in the agriculture industry are doing quite well, thank you. And we don't believe on this side of the House that we should take the attitude that we know what's best for you, but we are willing to work with the sectors that have challenges, like the pork producer. And in fact, the Nova Scotia government over the last 4 or 5 years has put more money into the pork industry than any province in Atlantic Canada. And we've made those investments with consultation with Pork Nova Scotia and the industry, the farmers out there. We've sit down, we've listened, we've worked with them and made the investments necessary to help them transition.
The Honourable, the Leader of the Official Opposition, on his final supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure what the minister's definition of transition is, but for a lot of those farmers, it means to close the doors. That's what it means, Mr. Speaker. Nova Scotia farmers are suffering the economic fallout as a result of flawed government policy. The less we are able to feed ourselves, the more dependent we become on imported food. Creating the conditions for a thriving and prosperous agricultural sector in Nova Scotia will pay great dividends and environmental benefits and in protecting consumers from pending increases for imported food. So my final question for the Minister of Agriculture is, when will he get serious about sitting down with our agricultural producers to develop a plan to help our farmers feed Nova Scotians?
Honourable, the Minister of Agriculture.
Mr. Speaker, I told the agriculture critic in budget estimates that we are sitting down with the farmers. We hope to come in sometime this fall with a framework that will assist the farmers in all the various commodities that are produced in the province of Nova Scotia. But, Mr. Speaker, I do want to say that I stood in my place and voted for a budget because it does support the farmer and their family. It supports Select Nova Scotia. It supports Buy Local, and it supports pork. It supports beef. It supports dairy. It supports poultry. And, Mr. Leader of the Opposition, what did you do? How did you vote?
The Honourable, the Member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. Yesterday, the member from Digby Annapolis stood up in this House in support of his local emergency room. He got a commitment from the Minister of Health that the Digby Emergency Room would stay open 24/7, 365 days a year, a promise he made last year, Mr. Speaker. Today, I'm standing up for the constituents of Colchester North and Cumberland North. The emergency rooms at North Cumberland Memorial and the Lillian Fraser Memorial are both closed today, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Health, will he commit to a 24/7, 365-day emergency room coverage for the North Cumberland and Lillian Fraser hospitals?
Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the member opposite forgets about all the other hospitals that are open today that are providing services to Nova Scotia. Mr. Speaker, we have the best ambulance system in all of North America, which the member opposite should know very well as being a past paramedic. Mr. Speaker, I can say that the individuals and the citizens of all regions in this province are treated fairly and equally, and they have the best medical system, the best emergency care in all of North America.
The Honourable, the Member for Sackville-Cobequid, on his first supplementary.
I'm sure the constituents of those areas, Mr. Speaker, will be quite glad to hear those comments from this minister. From Malagash to Amherst is 76 kilometres, Mr. Speaker. Could take over an hour to get there. I don't think that gives any comfort to those people who knows that their emergency room is closed. The minister may say his government is committed to keeping ERs open, but his plan is actually to reduce emergency services in places like Pugwash, Tatamagouche, and Digby. Just ask Dr. Ron Matsusaki, a recent recruit to Digby General Hospital, or Digby General ER Department, Mr. Speaker. Last week he stated, and I quote, "The appearance of that hospital is undergoing a natural process of attrition, but this attrition is being facilitated at the bureaucratic level," end quote, Mr. Speaker. And I'll table that, and I do have a question to the Minister of Health. What is this minister doing to ensure his department won't siphon off services in order to close hospital emergency rooms, Mr. Speaker?
Honourable, the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I can say that through our transformation document, through the FAZOR, that there are a number of recommendations that are held within it. Some that are hard to do, some that will be easier to do. Mr. Speaker, we work with a rural health strategy that we know where we're going into the future to protect rural areas. Mr. Speaker, I can say to the member opposite that we are not going to be closing rural ERs. We have committed to that. I've committed to it. My Premier's committed to it. And Mr. Speaker, I can say that we will continue to do our best to recruit individuals. Mr. Speaker, this is a recruiting game that we're falling into, that all jurisdictions across North America, if not all jurisdictions across across the world are looking for physicians. And as soon as we can train the physicians that are coming through Dalhousie, hopefully those 10 that we added in this year's round will come back and work in places just like Tatamagouche.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, healthcare is no game in this province. And it wouldn't be a game to that individual who's suffering a heart attack, who shows up on the emergency room doors and sees them closed, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of Health is committed to enacting all 103 recommendations of the operational review. Recommendation number 26 states some hospitals will be redefined as community health centres and, I quote, need not have inpatient beds or 24/7 emergency department services, end quote. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Health, will the minister tell this House which facilities are going to be redefined as community health centres?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, it is time for a new model of care in this province. It is time for a strengthened healthcare system, one that responds to the needs of all Nova Scotians. And I can say, with this year's budget, with our plan, we're going to do it.
The Honourable the Member for Digby-Annapolis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Tourism Minister. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister stated, and I quote, "From January to March, I see that U.S. visitors are actually up 25%, which is 1,500 more. Overseas visitors are up 68% to 4,900 more people." My question to the Minister, can the Minister tell Nova Scotians in detail what entry point these visitors are coming through?
Honourable the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member across the way, mostly by ear, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Member for Digby-Annapolis on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is that the Minister has no idea where the visitors are arriving from and whether tourist boarding connecting flights are incorrectly inflating the actual numbers. Mr. Speaker, a Stats Canada report released on May the 20th seemed to indicate a different trend. For March of this year, the same-day car travel from the U.S. was down 2.5% from the previous month and down 41% during the past 2 years. So my question is, how can the Minister say that U.S. visitors to Nova Scotia have increased when Stats Canada is reporting that U.S. visitation to Canada is decreasing?
The Honourable the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Heritage.
I say to the member across the way, Stats Canada reported figures within a year. As he shared with us, my figures were from January, February, and March, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable the Member for Digby-Annapolis on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, Stats Canada has reported that in March 2008, overseas visitors has fallen by 3% and have declined in 8 of Canada's 12 top markets. Again, Mr. Speaker, the numbers don't add up. Since nobody can understand the Minister's numbers, I'll ask the former Minister of Tourism, now our Premier. My question to the Premier, will you admit that the Minister's visitation numbers don't make sense?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, you know, the Minister of Tourism is doing a fantastic job in seeing visitors coming into our province, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, all one has to do is take a look at the last few weeks in this province, Mr. Speaker. We welcome thousands of visitors here to our great city in Halifax, to our great province, Mr. Speaker. They were all treated with hospitality, Mr. Speaker. They will be repeat visitors, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the model that's used, Mr. Speaker, around the numbers and around the estimates on the financials for tourism actually were put in place, I believe, in 1996, Mr. Speaker, under a previous government. The same model has continued to be used, Mr. Speaker, and I'm pleased to say that our government in the last number of years has hit the record for tourism numbers in our province.
Honourable the Member for Queens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Queens has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. My question is for the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. All industries are being impacted by high energy prices and rapid increase in our Canadian dollar. One such sector is the forest industry. They are being hit with a decrease in demand for their products, increased global competition, and a doubling of their fuel costs when transporting logs to mills and finished products to outside markets. The forestry sector is faced with a mesh of road classifications, making it nearly impossible to maximize loads from the woods to the mills. My question to the Minister is, why is he failing to deal with rules that are costing millions of dollars to our forestry sector?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member opposite for the question. Actually, Mr. Speaker, if the honourable member would talk to the folks in the industry, they'd find that we have been working with them, Mr. Speaker. In fact, we worked with them throughout the winter. Mr. Speaker, as everyone would know in this province, we have road closures with spring weight restrictions. And Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to say that this government, various departments have worked for the forest industry. In fact, Mr. Speaker, they gave us great accolades for the work we've been doing with them in conjunction with them to ensure that their industry will continue to survive.
The Honourable Member for Queens on the first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the Forest Products Transportation Committee has a plan that outlines the issues they want addressed. I also understand that this same presentation was presented to government. Forest producers are looking for a clear transportation vision, new truck configurations, and want to work with the department to bring about these positive changes that will make them more efficient. In short, they want to work with government to make themselves more efficient. My question to the minister is, why hasn't his government been back in touch with the Forest Products Transportation Committee regarding this request?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for it is a good question because that industry, like other industries in this province, Mr. Speaker, are having tough times. Mr. Speaker, we are looking at not only configurations of trucks on our roads, we're doing an assessment of certain roads, Mr. Speaker, that will help actually the industry that she's talking about. We're doing that now. We're looking at our bridges. And Mr. Speaker, what amazes me is that the member opposite and the group opposite are so concerned about the resource industry in this province, I think they would have voted for the budget.
The Honourable Member for Queens on her final supplementary.
That's rhetoric. Mr. Speaker, while some of the variables impacting Nova Scotians are outside of provincial control, there are some things the province can do to assist the industry. But it appears the government is failing to deal with the ideas being presented to them. We have seen the good ideas of farmers ignored, and now it seems the forest producers will be ignored as well. My question to the minister is, when will you sit down with this industry to work on the plans they have spent so much time on and effort in developing?
The Honourable Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for the question. And Mr. Speaker, we will continue to dialogue not only with that industry she's talking about, with all truckers in this province, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that those industries continue to thrive in this province. Mr. Speaker, they are a vital part of our province. We know that, Mr. Speaker. We have met with them. We'll continue to work with them. Mr. Speaker, we will make changes both in that industry and the trucking regulations in this province, Mr. Speaker, to assist the very people that she's talking about today.
The Honourable Member for Glace Bay.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Health. Today's media reports outline a series of downgrades of intensive care units in various regional hospitals across the province and closures, possibly including the ICU in Glace Bay. Those recommendations were made by Corpus Sanchez, the authors of the report that recommended 103 recommendations, all of which were quickly endorsed by the government. So my question to the minister is, have you and your government endorsed the recommendations of the $150,000 critical care report?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we have not accepted the recommendations held therein. It's a new document for us, one that we're reading through, seeing what the implications are, sharing that with the district health authorities to see what the implications will be for their areas. Mr. Speaker, also I want to comment that nowhere in that document does it talk about or have a recommendation on the closure of Glace Bay, and I just want to assure the member opposite of that.
The Honourable Member for Glace Bay on his first supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the leader of the official opposition, the leader of the NDP, was very proud, almost gleeful, to outline the fact that the Glace Bay ICU was stated for closure. But in true typical NDP fashion, Mr. Speaker, he chose to complain about a lack of consultation instead of supporting the ICU staff and the unit and the people in Glace Bay, Mr. Speaker.
Do you have a question?
Mr. Speaker, last year, 8 coronary care beds at Cape Breton Regional Hospital were permanently closed. Mr. Speaker, the 12 beds at the ICU at the regional hospital are full on a regular basis. This report recommends that 5 more ICU beds possibly would be removed from the system. So my question is for the minister, Mr. Speaker, does he believe that given the health human resource strain being felt throughout this system, that Halifax would be able to shoulder most of the acutely ill cases in this province? Yes or no, Mr. Minister?
Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and again, I thank the member opposite for that question. Mr. Speaker, I don't think the coronary unit here in Halifax can shoulder all the requirements of the province. So, Mr. Speaker, again, we'll look at these recommendations more closely to see what it means to all Nova Scotians. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank the member opposite for underlining a research problem that the NDP have. Mr. Speaker, again, there is nowhere in that document that it talks about Glace Bay, that talks about the things that he's allocating. Mr. Speaker, it's not fair to Nova Scotians. It is not fair for them to fearmonger, to say that these things are happening in Nova Scotia. Let them do their research correctly. Let them know the truth for once.
The Honourable the member for Glace Bay on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the report does advocate for a further downgrade of services. I just want to ask the minister, if it's not true what the leader of the official opposition said yesterday, then let me ask the minister as a final question to the minister. The Glace Bay ICU will be closing temporarily for the summer. Mr. Minister, is the Glace Bay ICU going to close on a permanent basis? Yes or no?
The Honourable the Minister of Health. Order, please. The Honourable the Minister of Health has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, one word, no.
The Honourable the member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Health. It appears this minister has turned to Dr. Zeus for advice in managing health care, Mr. Speaker. Last week, he told the Bridgewater Chamber of Commerce there are great similarities between the Who's in Who'sville and health care here in Nova Scotia. He said we must take action before calamity strikes, and the minister stated it will take our collective voices and actions over time to bring about real changes, end quote, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the minister, we met with healthcare workers this week, and they told us that they've been calling for better recruitment and retention for years. So I'd like to ask the minister, how come the minister has not heard their collective voices?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I know the member spent a lot of time cross-examining my budget during estimates. Mr. Speaker, there were a number of initiatives in there that talked about recruitment of nurses, that talked about recruitment of doctors. Mr. Speaker, again, I did have the opportunity to see a wonderful movie with my children. And Mr. Speaker, I did talk about getting all of our collective voices together to make a change in healthcare. Mr. Speaker, that means all Nova Scotians, all political parties, all healthcare workers, because only together will we be able to make a difference.
The Honourable the member for Sackville-Cobequid on his first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, in the same speech, the minister admonished healthcare unions for opposing legislation that takes away their democratic right. The minister said that recruitment was being hurt because ads showed that the healthcare professionals were being overworked and their rights were being taken away. Hardly a great working atmosphere, Mr. Speaker. So I'd like to ask the Minister of Health, why doesn't this government either withdraw this legislation or call it for a vote and resolve this issue once and for all?
The Honourable the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I can see once again that the research is bad because I don't remember seeing the member opposite at my meeting. I didn't see that he was interested in healthcare in Nova Scotia. He wasn't interested in the healthcare of people in Bridgewater. Mr. Speaker, Bill 1 is a one that we will continue to examine, one that I know the Minister of Labour and Workforce Development will keep on mind. Mr. Speaker, this is in no way, I'm going to say it again, anything against our wonderful healthcare workers.
The Honourable Member for Sackville-Cobequid on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'm in this House today as a healthcare worker because of the way these people treated healthcare workers in the past and over the last 10 years. That's why I'm here, Mr. Speaker.
Order, please.
Minister and this government listen to or talk to and ask advice, Mr. Speaker, are frontline healthcare workers. So the minister, can you tell us when you will start asking frontline healthcare workers how to solve the problem in healthcare and not just slap it off, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, this comes from a member. This comes from a member from a party who voted against a budget, who voted against family pharmacare, who voted against self-care telecare, who votes against transformative change.
Order, please. Order, please. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I would suggest maybe that the member opposite would like to take a walk outside, cool his heels, maybe talk to a few real Nova Scotians and find out exactly what we should be doing for health care. Mr. Speaker, we have a tremendous investment in Nova Scotia, a tremendous investment in health care, and we will continue to make changes to make health care better for all Nova Scotians.
The Honourable Member for Halifax-Needham.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question through you is to the Minister of Labour and Workforce Development. Mr. Speaker, firms like RIM, Keen, Registered.com, Citco, and other IT companies are welcome players in the Nova Scotia provincial economy. Registered.com is expanding in Yarmouth and opening a Halifax office with public assistance from Economic Development and Nova Scotia Business Inc. There is strong demand for IT employees here in Nova Scotia, and the average weekly pay is $964 a week. A week, Mr. Speaker. So my question for the minister is this. With such good employment opportunities, can the minister explain why Mount St. Vincent has stopped taking applicants for its IT program?